So hi, I would like to introduce to you Yvonne Wolf as we are celebrating the Lunar New Year. Yvonne Wolf was born in Taiwan and educated in the U.S. and Europe. She has extensive experience living and working internationally in both Denmark and Japan in human resources and as a global language trainer. She is fluent in English, Mandarin, and Danish, and has studied Japanese, Spanish, and Greek. Between work and personal travel, she has visited more than 20 countries and 25 states within the US. After settling with her family in the Chicago area, she formed the Chinese Intercultural LLC to help American business leaders to develop the ability to communicate confidently and effectively with Chinese business people. Help me welcome Yvonne Wolf.
Thank you, Karen. It's so nice to be here with Downers Grove Public Library. Like Karen mentioned, I usually work with a lot of businesses and help them speak more knowledgeably to their clientele, their potential Chinese clientele. And today, I'm stepping out of that a little bit and just explaining to you what the celebrating Lunar New Year is all about. Now, this is a huge holiday that is celebrated in East Asia by about 20% of the world's population. So with that, I would like to welcome you in joining me in celebrating the Lunar New Year. I'm going to share my screen, and you are welcome to write in the chat any kind of comments or events perhaps you can relate to, and also any questions you may have in the chat, and I'll address them in a little while. I will first cover this 45 minutes. We'll try to cover a overview and just give you a flavor or a glimpse of what that looks like, that Lunar New Year celebration in East Asia and also everywhere around the world. So I just want to say that I cannot cover everything. It's not the point to cover extensively or everything extensively about what every country does and what happens in particular families. So I will only show you what I think typically happens around the world where I've been and how it's celebrated different places. And I can address 5 questions today. Now, these 5 questions should cover many of your concerns, or if not, please let me know in the chat. So these 5 questions will give us a beginning to understand that part of the world. So for a non-Christian culture, like the Chinese culture, they don't celebrate Christmas. But in the beginning of the year, with the Lunar New Year, they celebrate something that is almost just as significant as the Christmas is in Western world. So first, we'll talk about what is Chinese New Year, what is Lunar New Year. Maybe you've heard Chinese New Year before. I certainly have, a lot more than in recent years we hear about Lunar New Year. Why is it just change? Is it the same thing? Secondly, where is this celebrated? Number 3, who celebrates it? Number 4, what do people do when they celebrate Lunar New Year? And lastly, what can you do to be part of this celebration? So with these thoughts, I welcome you to celebrating the Lunar New Year with me. I will highlight all the questions so that you know exactly what section we're on. I don't want to lose anyone out there. So let's start with, what is Chinese New Year? When I came to this country as a child, I heard about Chinese New Year. I was thrilled to hear that in schools they were talking about Chinese New Year. Now you might think that's funny. I came from Taiwan. Why would that be such a thrill for a child to hear about Chinese New Year in school? Well, in school, in Taiwan, it's purely academic. You don't get to do anything fun. No celebrations until school is over. School is serious, school is commitment. And the fact that I was being asked in my third grade classroom in United States to help other people understand Chinese New Year, this was absolutely the funnest day I had in school. Uh, at that time, I was learning English. I didn't understand most of the things that was happening in the classroom, but this was one day where I get to shine, and that thought, that bit of fun childhood memory is what I cherish and what I'm here to show you. So that time it was called Chinese New Year. Now more recently we hear Lunar New Year term used a lot more. Now why is there such a change? Well, first, let me ask you a question. How do we know today is January 30th, 2022? This is the calendar that is now used in most of the world. Most of the world population, we're in the 21st century. Now, how do we know that? This is not a philosophical question, it is more a practical one. Until rather recently, in the last few hundred years, we have the world has turned more and more towards this what we call the Gregorian calendar. Before Copernicus discovered that the Earth revolved around the sun, and this is about 16th century, there were no calendars that people agreed upon. There was the Julian calendar, Roman calendar, and then there were several calendars that were based on the moon. So these so-called lunar calendars, Chinese had one, the Chinese civilization had one for thousands of years. And then you might know that the Jewish calendar is also based on the moon. And there's also Persian calendars that's also based on the moon. So this is one type of a lunar calendar. So the Chinese used this calendar for thousands of years, and you may know that the international trade they were carrying through the Silk Road, where they sold tea, silk, porcelain, needed people to know what day it is. How do you drive? How do you pick up commerce products if you didn't know what day it was? So in East Asia, the Chinese lunar calendar was widely used. So this idea that it was a Chinese calendar that was developed by dynastic China is why people referred it to a Chinese New Year. On the first of that calendar, it is New Year's. But in recent times, in the last 20, 30 years or so, you might notice that, well, China hasn't been such a good neighbor to its borders. And countries that have traditionally celebrated Chinese New Year don't want to be part of that political identity, that communist Chinese political identity. So they don't want to celebrate Chinese New Year anymore. So they just say they celebrate the lunar calendar, the Lunar New Year. So such examples is Vietnam has a Tet festival, and that is the same Lunar New Year, the same first of the calendar in that lunar calendar. In this lunar calendar, the first is on a new moon. So this new moon is when there's no moon in the sky. So it's absolutely dark. And the way the lunar calendar works is that it takes 15 days to get to a full moon. So this is the way Chinese know how to count, so to speak. So this year, the Year of the Tiger will start on February 1st. As of today, we are so-called in the tail end of the Year of the Ox. So Lunar New Year's Eve will be tomorrow. And some people might even say, hey, Google said Year of the Tiger starts on February 1st. Yes, it does. But New Year's Eve is many times just as important to people who celebrate it. That means they get together with their family, eat dinner together, or they start preparing, they start decorating, they start cleaning the house, doing things that makes the first a special day. Now, how long is this festival? Many people think that, well, it's New Year's, right? Then it must be just one day. That's not true because, well, let's go back to this Gregorian calendar. How do you know? We are in a tradition, we're familiar with the weekend, Sunday and Saturdays. Well, a non Christian culture do not have Sundays or Saturdays. So Chinese calendar was developed by non-Christians. Now, Christian calendar has the Sabbath and the Sunday. So the Chinese traditionally, before the 20th century, did not have weekends. I know it's a hard thing to grasp. I would be lost without the weekend. The Chinese would have every 15 days, on the 15th with the full moon, that would be a significant marker. And then people would take some time off, and there's some way to to space out your work according to the full moon. So the Chinese New Year traditionally was 15 days of festivity. 15 days of partying and eating, and it may sound very decadent and very long. But in my recent research, watching a medieval program on Christmas, I found out that the 12 days of Christmas started on Christmas Day and it ended on January 6th. So the 12 days of Christmas was a day of partying, eating, feasting, and doing lots of fun things. In fact, Shakespeare's The Twelfth Night was a comedy that was held on the 12th day of Christmas. It was a day for merriment and making people laugh and dance. So, this consideration of holidays being so long perhaps worked in the medieval times and perhaps worked in the pre modern world. Currently in China, they don't do the 15 days either. Sure enough, on the 15th, so in this time, this year, it will be easy to count. It will be exactly February 15th. On that day, there is a lunar festival. I'm sorry, there is a lantern festival. So lantern festival ends the whole New Year season, and it is generally a festival that tells people it's time to go home. It's time to go back to work. But currently in China, modern day China, and other Chinese speaking countries, the holiday is just one week. As you can see, that's marked in yellow. This week is called Golden Week in China, and other countries around there will also have approximately a week off, where the 5th and the 6th of the first of the Lunar New Year ends marks the ending of the time to go back to work. So because this holiday, or this holiday is more like I call a season, the Lunar New Year season being 15 days, you might notice that Chicago Chinese New Year parade this year is on the 12th of February. So it's not on the 1st. And this is very typically happens that Lunar New Year parades in New York City, in San Francisco, could either fall on the 5th or the 12th. So there's this whole block of time that where it could happen. So now we understand a little bit about what is Chinese New Year, what is Lunar New Year. That Chinese New Year is a term from a long historical cultural identity, whereas Lunar New Year is a way to deal with more modern political ties or political identity. The Lunar New Year term is used far more now and is considered a more value neutral term. However, if you use Chinese New Year, it's not wrong because it is based on a Chinese calendar. Now, where is this celebrated? Now, I touched a little bit about Chinese speaking countries. Did you know that Chinese speaking countries, there are six of them? That means it's not just Taiwan, China, that you may have heard of, but Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, and Macau. So that makes six countries that use Chinese as its official language, perhaps used in government, in education, or in radio and media. So another important fact to know about Lunar New Year that it is non-religious. It is not about any particular gods, even though China, just the popular Chinese gods, there are 200 of them. This is a holiday that I can guess, yeah, in China and a lot of countries, like I mentioned, the six Chinese-speaking countries, but there are also several Asian countries such as Japan and I think yeah, Thailand, Philippines, and you see France being marked red, and Peru. Now, I have a friend from Lima, Peru, and he told me that there are in Lima, Peru, there are more Chinese restaurants than Peruvian restaurants. So go figure. People love Chinese food everywhere. And in France, you will see that there are some sort of special event that marks this holiday. And just as it's even though it's not marked, I've been to London, um, yeah, in London, England's Lunar New Year festivities, and so they have some kind of parade or they have lion dances. So that shows you the how far this holiday extends and how many places that are celebrated. And you see United States and Canada being marked, and that means big cities where there's over 500,000 of people from Chinese or East Asian descent or heritage will have some sort of event to mark this special day. In Canada, you might Toronto, Vancouver have a huge Asian population, and so does in Los Angeles and New York City and Washington D.C. Now we have an idea of where in the world you're likely to see a Chinese New Year celebration. We'll talk about who celebrates it. Now, I lived in Denmark for 4 years, and in Copenhagen, they also had a type of Lunar New Year celebration. So here is a good picture to give you an idea of who celebrates the Lunar New Year. You can see that the flags up there that's unmarked. The left is Philippines. The middle one with the blue stripe in the middle, that's Mongolia, and green flag for Macau. Mongolians also celebrate this day in the sense that they will do something to mark this. And this may be fireworks, this may be parades, and this may be a busy day in the restaurant. Or in the restaurants, you'll see lots of halls being reserved and private parties or just big parties given by companies. And you can also see that includes Indonesia and yes, and I think it's Thailand and Korea as well. So here we have among East Asian Americans, this post that I got a picture of is my local Korean supermarket. So they also have some way to mark the Lunar New Year where they dress up, the children dress up, maybe go and greet and wish their grandparents a Happy New Year, or just some sort of meal, eating together, a special meal together. To the right, you see that some graph that shows you so many people and how funny that you can see Vietnamese people, Vietnamese Americans celebrate Chinese New Year more than Chinese people. Go figure. And then you might also see that Japanese people are also marked here. And that is this idea that the Japanese culture are aware of the Chinese zodiac animals and they are aware of that it is the year of the tiger. That means a lot to their people as well, of who will have a good year and what do we do to remember the tiger. Now we get to what do people do? What does that celebration look like? Now I have mentioned a few things, but there are generally 5 things that we can visibly see. But first, let me give you another name for this festivity. Lunar New Year is also often called the Spring Festival. This is a new year that often arrives somewhere in the end of January to the middle of February. And this floating time, because of the lunar calendar, is later than our Gregorian calendar of January 1st. So in this later time where it starts, let's say it's February 10th, and then you have this 15 days of celebration, this really brings us closer to spring. Well, here around here is still not. We're not talking about spring flowers yet, but we are approaching that time where it's closer to what we call the spring equinox, where the sun and the daylight and the nighttime is the same number of hours. So this move from winter to spring, from cold to warm, is a change in energy. Now, you might have heard in Taoism, there's a yin and a yang. Now, yin and the yang is two energies. Yin being the cold energy, the moon, and yang being the warm energy, the sun. These two energies are constantly at play. So, in the context of Lunar New Year, it is that cold energy moving away, and the warm energy over. So this warm energy is taking its place, and we're looking forward to that change. Now, yin energy is also being cold, the cold colors. Just look at outside. We have really no colors, just white and gray. But these colors, these lack of colors, is what we call yin colors, are cold colors. And we're really looking forward to that young color, that warm colors coming back. And these warm colors are often yellow, orange, and red. So this is a good visual for you to see how we wish that cold, drabby colors turned into the yellow and the red and the pinks that we so look forward. Now, how do we show this transition in a tangible form? How do we tell people we want you to keep your hopes up for the warmth to come back? Well, we decorate with some of these decorations, and we use this red color to signify that we're going to bring that warm air back into our houses, back through our windows and our doors. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and show you how we use this. So this character you see right on the middle of that door, that is the character for spring, as I'm holding up here. The spring character is like a little Christmas tree because it has branches. This is the spring is sprouting from the top. So this character is stylized, but it is often put in the middle of the door to show that we want this warm air to come through our doors. Now this is the way we pointing up. If you see this little sprouting top is pointing up, this is going right side up. If you have this character and you have it upside down, it is just as good because upside down is means in the Chinese language is a pun on it has arrived. So if you have it upright or upside down, both are good. It both are culturally appropriate. If you just want it to be symmetrical and right in the middle so that the warm air can hit your house right through. And then we often also see this character, and this character is often translated as good fortune, But I think probably a better way it means blessings. So if you see some people have English on English, there's signs that says bless this house or bless this home. This is as close as that in the Chinese world. So you will often see this on the front door right in the middle as well. And it's typical that Chinese will put these on symmetrically. So that will be even on both sides. So it hopes that the goodness you will receive this year is evenly distributed, that it isn't lopsided or it doesn't come in waves, that it comes evenly and you will always be blessed with such stability. So here are some possible decorations, and I will show you how they are typically hung around the doors, also in this symmetrical way. So now this door is ready for Lunar New Year. Let me go back to sharing my screen with you. And often Chinese would give these red envelopes as gifts. And I heard from Karen that your library will be giving these away as well. So these again, red envelopes are decorated in many ways, and I have a couple here to show you. And they may have flowers on them. And again, flowers is a sign of spring. Spring is coming, whether that doesn't look like it out there, but we have this faith that it will come. So here you see a red envelope that is here, and you can put a little bit of money. In traditionally in Chinese culture, it was given from older to younger generations. So parents to children, grandparents to grandchildren. And here I like to share with you this little tradition that my mother-in-law has picked up. Now, my in-laws are non-Asian, and my mother-in-law learned about this red envelope, and this is the one that she has decided to participate in giving my children a little bit of spending money in these red envelopes every Lunar New Year. I find that very endearing and I'm very grateful for that because in my family all is all in Los Angeles. I don't see much of my Chinese family, and especially during Lunar New Year, and that the fact that my mother-in-law decided to pick up this practice really keeps my culture in practice for my children who may not get that as frequently. This is such a typical practice for children that Chinese clothes for children will have pockets. Yes, pockets just for these red envelopes to be filling those pockets. Now, how much money people have asked me how much money to put in there. Well, in it used to be the only time children get money. Now, of course, you can probably see in your own homes. Like my teenagers, every weekend they need some money to go and eat out with their friends. But a little bit, when I grew up, a few dollars, $5 was enough to make us so very, very happy. And in fact, my mother in law isn't the only one who figured this out. Target sells a gift card in the Chinese New Year, Chinese red envelope facade. And you can see that Starbucks also sells gift cards in the Year of the Tiger. And there are other similar companies who have also picked up on this Chinese practice. And that brings us to why so many cultures in East Asia celebrate it because, well, this is a time that if you don't participate, you're losing out on an economic spike. Another typical thing to give away or to have as a decoration is oranges. Now we decorate oranges with a little red paper, and you can stick something like this on the orange. Well, because oranges are already in that warm color. And the oranges being so sweet and juicy is a great idea that your year be filled with sweetness. Now, some people also ask me, like, what makes them so lucky? I said, aren't you glad you got one? Well, and also, how do we think of the Irish with their shamrock? Why is the shamrock so lucky? Well, just as the shamrock is lucky to the Irish, the oranges are lucky to mandarins. Another typical thing to do is to watch a dragon dance or a lion dance. If you were so lucky to have seen such a dance, you probably saw a lion dance indoors. Now, lion dance is the white creature on the mystical creature on the right, and there is done by two persons. Now, these two people have to work in incredible acrobatic feat to look like one animal. To the left, you have the dragon. The dragon is a far larger mystical creature. That means that two people can never be enough to maneuver a dragon. Many times, a dragon would take 10 to 20 people to maneuver, and they are often outdoors in parades and not so much indoors. So, if you weren't sure which one you saw, that could be a good clue. And I will give you a little bit of a music that help you remember. Now, that music may not be the kind of music you think of on New Year's Eve, not all lang syne, or it doesn't even sound like music you could dance cheek to cheek. But this is what we call warm or yang music. Now, this yang music is here to drive out all that cold energy, drive out all that evil spirit. Now, it does sound kind of odd to think of that, and you say, what is exactly this evil spirit? Well, let me help you use a more concrete example. In your dark, cold garage, in the corners of the dark, cold garage, you might have little critters and spiders that's trying to find some warmth to stay inside. If you have this dragon or this lion that dance through your house, I'm sure all the spiders and cockroaches, anything, little mice perhaps even living there would be scared off. And this idea that you're flushing out all that old energy and that those critters that might be eating your storage of rice is the evil energy you want to get rid of. Any music like that will surely scare off all those little critters. And now let's talk about what does the tiger mean? Now that we're on the tail end of the ox, first I need to explain that there is no bad animal in the Chinese zodiac. Every animal has its admirable traits, and every year we celebrate that animal for that amazing trait they have. Now, we're far from the year of the rat, so I won't go into the year of the rat explanation. But if you're so lucky to have heard that talk, I would be very glad to touch on this by telling you a little bit about the ox. Each animal, like the ox and now that we're on the tail end of the ox and now the tiger, they have a yin and yang relationship. That means that they are similarly good, but they have differences. And these differences shows us how we need to change from one year to another. This ox has always been a sign of strength. Oxens are what we call beasts of burden. So they will get to their goal by sheer strength and perseverance. And they'll just push, push, and they aren't afraid of a little sweat, a little elbow grease, and just get their hands dirty so they can get that work done. Well, the tiger is a different animal. You might have heard that tigers sleep for like 20 hours a day. But the tiger is watching. The tiger is watching for that opportunity. And when that opportunity should reveal itself, the tiger pounds on it and go full gusto. That idea that this year is your year to take your risk and just go for it. That's the spirit of the tiger. And if you think there's anything else to learn from a tiger, maybe this is the year you speak up. Now, this is known that tiger is a aggressive animal, and while all the other animals, if you think of the rat and the ox, they're not really known for making such a big noise. But tigers, they have a roar that will wake the whole valley up. Number four is a very popular thing to do together is just eat. Eat at a Chinese restaurant. If you ever notice, many Chinese restaurants, especially the authentic ones, have far fewer small tables for two and far more tables for six, eight, 10, because Chinese people just love to eat together. Number five, during this 15-day period, in traditional calendars, there are days that are marked for especially to see your in-laws or special days to see your grandparents. So there are special days to go to the temple. So it's a day. So one of these days you will go see your family. One of these days you may go visit a temple. So here in the temple, did you see on the table? There are oranges. And lastly, now we come to what can you do to be part of the celebration? Now, there aren't as many Chinese temples around here. There are many Buddhist temples in Los Angeles. They just pop up everywhere. Uh, and, uh, and you will see a great number of people who visit the temples during this season. But there are other things to do. First, you can wear red. I'm wearing red early. You don't have to wear traditional Chinese red. I happen to have a collection of Chinese clothes. So, and this man here is the ambassador from United States to Vietnam, and his family, and he is holding a sign that says friendship. So this is definitely something that is respected and revered and honored in Vietnam as well. So number two, clean your home. Start early on that spring cleaning. Now, this sign I actually got from a school district in Singapore. So I wish our school district would encourage our kids to help us clean the house. This is apparently culturally appropriate activity. So that's why they have this up. And they say clean the house so you can put up your Chinese New Year decorations. Number three is getting a haircut. Now, this might be a little odd, but in Chinese culture, before the before the 20th century, both men and women had long hair. So getting a haircut was a once a year ordeal. This is not something we do every 3 weeks. And so, and after this seasonal practice was over, Chinese hair, let's say hair salons and places like that traditionally close for a good part of those 15 days. There's lots of reasons for that. One of them is that during Chinese New Year season, we put away our knives and your scissors. So you must get your hair done before. This tradition has apparently continued, and I do know many, many Chinese people or people of East Asian culture get their hair done right before the season begins. And that's also could just be practical. We all want to look our best in those family pictures. And eating together is something you might be able to do. Well, I definitely hope you can do this better than last year. Last year, all the restaurants were takeout only, and I hope that you can eat together in some capacity. And then you can also learn to say 恭喜发财, which means you wish you a prosperous new year, but is as close as to Happy New Year. Now you might have heard 恭喜发财 before. If you have, well, you could.
Yeah, well, if they don't, then what can you do about it? Yeah, and if it's a lifetime of getting the dough, what can you do about it? Impeach him?
Please, somebody has unmuted himself. Gong Hei Fa Choi is the Cantonese version of the saying Gong Xi Fa Cai. Now, which is in Chinese, in Mandarin. So I am teaching you how to say in Mandarin, Gong Xi Fa Cai. It sounds very close to Gong Hei Fa Choi, and Gong Hei Fa Choi was the Cantonese pronunciation. The reason why this change from the Cantonese to Mandarin is also the immigration pattern in United States. Most immigration that came before the 20th century, we're talking about during Civil War or even before then, it was from the Cantonese provinces and Cantonese speaking provinces of China. So now this spelling that I show you, 恭喜 or the XI, it is from the pinyin system that is more universally used from China. And I will repeat with, if you like to repeat with me, you're very welcome to, is 恭喜发财. And with that, I wish you a very prosperous new year. You can look at these questions and anybody should be able to answer them. And I hope you feel much more confidently about the Lunar New Year.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. That was absolutely fascinating. Um, we did have one question from earlier from Michelle, who wanted to know if the Buddhists have more traditions than others, like going to the temples, burning incense, etc.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, there are different ways to celebrate Lunar New Year, definitely. And I have cousins who are Buddhists, and there are cousins who aren't. So that is doesn't seem to be a conflict at all. So it does is again, this is not a religious holiday. So my cousins who are Christian, who are Buddhist, who are there are Muslims in China, and they often celebrate Lunar New Year just as well. They might celebrate with a little differences in the food culture. For example, many times the food culture emphasizes having a lot of meat that perhaps Chinese don't have on a daily basis. But then my Buddhist cousins, they will have a whole spread that's vegetarian. So this again, this holiday isn't religious in nature, so that's why Chinese people of many different cultures and religions find it easy to celebrate.
Thank you. Pamela was wondering if there are any temples in the Chicago area that you know of.
Yeah, there are. I know there is a. You have to Google this one because I've been one time some time ago. I can't remember, but there is a Buddhist temple in Chicago, and it might be Japanese. So that's but they again they will do a New Year blessing. I know that Chinatown had one, but it was being remodeled at the time. So and then there are just some of them just smaller temples you have to look for. Yeah, but there are not that as many as I'm used to in the Los Angeles area. But many Chinese people do their own altars and incense at home. So that does not seem to be a problem for many um, to give thanks to the gods.
Excellent, thank you. Sean was wondering, are moon cakes a traditional dessert to celebrate the Lunar New Year?
Well, that's I'm glad to hear that somebody knows about mooncakes. Yeah, well, mooncakes is for generally speaking for Moon Festival. So Moon Festival is August 15th in the lunar calendar. Yeah, so that some falls usually at the end of September somewhere in our calendar. And that is considered actually the last major holiday before the Spring Festival, before Lunar New Year. So if you're aware of the mooncake, that's definitely something that is specially eaten for that particular festival. For Lunar New Year, there are other sets of dishes that are special to the festival, and many regions have their own special dishes. So that could just change so much. But I could tell you there is a New Year cake. Now the cake, it sounds like cake, but in English the translation is cake. But the New Year cake is not soft and spongy. This cake is made out of rice flour. It's actually very sticky when you heat it up. It is what is it? Yes, it's called niangao, which means a rice cake that is actually quite sticky, mochi based. So if you are familiar with mochi ice cream, that thin layer, just imagine it was in a solid form, about an inch by 2 inches tall. So this type of cake, yes, we call it cake. It's better eaten warmed up, and it's sticky. So this idea that you'll have something sticky and sweet in your life. It's a very simple way of passing on some goodness and happiness.
Um, uh, uh, Tricia was wondering, she said her granddaughter and daughter-in-law are Chinese. They live in California. She has the red envelopes, but don't want to put cash in them for mailing. Can she use something else?
Oh, yes, avoiding sending red envelopes through the mail. Yes, this has, yes, what, so the one benefit of explaining this cultural practices is that everybody now knows that there may be money in there, and this is probably not good in the years of porch pirates. Yes, we do send gift cards, across the country, and now digital gift cards is not as fun, I have to say. But this in China, there's digital red envelopes, so it's actually a digital red envelope that you can open. It's not again, they did this so that to reduce contact, right? Contactless red envelopes. And everybody tells me the same thing. It's not as fun. but we have to live with the distances, and well, we yeah just have to do that. So now what else I have done for people like my younger cousins is that I put chocolate coins in there. So they still get to open something and get something fun and sweet, but it's not the money doesn't come in this form. So you can send the gift cards and then send something cute and fun, so they still get that flavor of Lunar New Year.
Uh, do you know if Chinatown is still going to host a Lunar New Year parade on February 12th?
There is one. I just saw that just posted in the Chicago, like Choose Chicago website.
Mhm.
Chicago, look under Chicago Lunar New Year. They do have a parade on the 12th. Now I'm just glad it's not this past weekend. I mean, the snow is not very nice to be out there standing in the slush and waiting for the parade. So yes, but firecrackers is definitely a big way to celebrate Chinese New Year. You might hear this all over in Asia, the fireworks firing off. And of course, you have to think that China is the homeland of firecrackers and fireworks. So it's probably been a way to celebrate for thousands of years.
Um, uh, Greg was wondering, why did China associate years with the zodiac signs as opposed to months as in the West?
Wow, that is just a longer answer to this. I actually do a program called The Power of the Chinese Zodiac and You. So so the long answer would take a good 45 minutes. It is used far more in Chinese culture than the West, meaning that we not a lot of people I know anyway knows when exactly Pisces or when exactly Capricorn. But in the Chinese world, people as children memorize the order of the zodiac. So they know that the ox was last. Now it comes the tiger. The next one would be the hare. And so this kind of base knowledge is definitely the way we use to have any kind of reference to time. so so it's probably just the beginning of understanding a culture that is non Christian based or not based on the system of stars.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see, does anybody else have any other questions? Well, people might be typing. I will show this. So this is what we will be giving out at the library, along with a red envelope with a coin, though it's not actual money that's in it. So I will tell you that actually right now. So there's a good luck coin in it, but it is not spendable
Yes.
that way.
Yes, and I can give you another. Let's see, Karen told me that your good luck coin has a hole in there, and
Mhm.
that is the traditional Chinese money. Chinese money have holes in it because it used to be strung in groups of 10. So you would carry your money in the little strings of money, and this kind of jingling is also very fun and exciting. And people think of the coin having an hole, and it means like it has an eye. So so there's a lot of things that goes with that culture.
Excellent. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Yvonne, for coming out and talking about actually one of my personal favorite holidays to go celebrate.
Yes, I'm
Uh,
so glad, Karen. And had a pleasure of meeting Karen a couple months before, and it's just wonderful to know that people, and I welcome everyone to celebrate this Lunar New Year with me. I hope to be back for another program. I do, if you would like to visit my website, I will also put this in the chat. Um, oops, sorry, sorry. Actually, I did the wrong thing. Uh, there. Okay, so the second one's correct. And yeah, and I do talks on other Chinese topics as well, like Chinese food and such as Chinese zodiac that someone mentioned. I do talks on the introduction to the East Asian garden and birds and blossoms in Chinese painting motif. And I'm actually doing that for Morton Arboretum in March.
right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Yvonne.
Yeah, and happy Year of the Tiger.
And happy Year of the Tiger.
Bye bye.